find all of WNUR Sports' content in one convenient place.
Aha! Why, I know where. Skedaddle over to WNURsports.com, your online hub for everything WNUR Sports.
How bodacious! What might one encounter in this magical digital destination?
Updated broadcast schedules, social media posts, articles, and everything your heart desires. So head over to WNURsports.com and find happiness.
Yes. Ha ha ha. Yes. Hola y bienvenidos to the Obscure Ballers finale. And Sid, where are we?
We are in beautiful, beautiful Lima, Peru, for 2 weeks of a wonderful project that's been in the works for some time now. Still kind of surreal that we're here, but very, very excited to share what we've got in store for you. You know, as we'll say later on, it's not goodbye, it's see you later. This might have been the last yes, ha ha ha, yes. You might have heard from us live on air to 89.3 FM and YouTube, but it is not the last you will see of Obscure Ballers.
Absolutely. So, as we mentioned, this is our finale, episode 14, the last one of the quarter.
14 episodes.
Yeah.
Astounding.
Yeah,
honestly.
14 weeks in a row. We never stopped. And, it's snowing in Evanston. But as you can see here, we are in T-shirts and shorts, jerseys repping Conmebol, of course. But yeah, let's go ahead and get it started, Sid. So our first segment, usually we go with Obscure Ballers of the Week, but
I'd say we owe a bit of an explanation of some things here. So I guess let's start it off with, how did this all begin? So, I mean, you're the one who, I guess, found the exigence for this. So
yeah, absolutely.
tell the folks.
Instagram Reels, it's fantastic. And I'm scrolling Instagram Reels, and I'm looking at La Liga Lima, which is a basketball league here in Lima, Peru. We'll get into it a little later, but probably the highest quality basketball league in Peru. And
you follow them because
I grew up in Lima. I grew up in Lima. My father's Peruvian. My entire father's side of the family is Peruvian. And I played basketball growing up here in Lima. I played for my school team. I played at different basketball academies and whatnot. And so I followed the league just because I knew people in it. It was just something I was aware of. And I see that Keenan Fitzmaurice is playing for Club Regatas, which is one of the premier clubs in La Liga Lima. It's also just generally a sports club here in Lima. But Club de Regatas Lima is probably the most storied team in this league, the most storied basketball club in the country.
Yes.
And I knew tons of friends that played there throughout their youth years, and I knew coaches there and all that. And so I was like, there's no way, that's crazy. So we start digging a little bit, Sid and I, because Keenan Fitzmaurice is the obscure baller, like the original obscure baller, the first athlete.
Real obscure baller sickos
Right.
will remember that when we started this show way back,
April.
almost a year now.
Yeah.
In February.
Well, February was the
Sports-a-thon episode.
Yeah.
We started up a social media after that, but it really started in the basement of Franz with us naming obscure ballers, just back and forth, you put out your Hasho Akendelis or different obscure ballers, and one of the first ones we named was Keenan Fitzmaurice, a guy for Northwestern who was a backup center, didn't get a lot of time on the court, but someone that the fans really loved. Wildside still really loves him. We had been following his career path, just a player who you could see the mentality was there. You could see the passion for the game was there, and the fans really resonated with that. And so he was the first player that we featured on the social.
Yeah, first ever player that we featured there. Absolutely loved him in his year at Northwestern. And so I see that Keenan is playing for Regatas in La Liga de Lima. And I'm just like, there's no way, that's crazy, right? Like, what's happening? And so we start digging a little bit, and it turns out that the current coach of Regatas is Julio Monjes, who was my 6th grade basketball coach back at Colegio Santa Maria Marianistas. And now we're really starting to kind of, connect the dots and then really get the ball rolling on this project. And we start thinking, we're like, oh, well, we got to interview him. We got to do this. We got to do that. And then we realize, well, why don't we make a documentary? Pie in the sky,
I mean, first, why don't we go to Lima? I mean, that was something we kind of just said as a joke, honestly. Of like, because like we joke all the time about like throw things out there that have no chance.
Cats to the Natty, Final Four,
real Matt Campbell takes.
Yeah.
No disrespect. I mean, it's
shout out Matt Campbell.
Shout out Matt Campbell. But it's just like something that an ambition, a pipe dream, really. And then we started thinking about it, and it's like you have family in Lima that we've been staying with. Regatas is very close by transportation wise. We have things figured out. Food wise, we have things figured out. It was really just the plane tickets, right?
So we figured it out with the help of the Latin American and Caribbean Studies Department, specifically the Andean Studies Working Group under Professor Jorge Coronel, who is also it's a project. So this is an independent study. It is an LACS independent study. So we're getting credit for it, which is nice. And
huge, especially with how finals are going.
Yeah, technically finals week is next week. It really does not feel like it. I'm not gonna lie. But Professor Coronel is also the sponsor of that independent study. So he'll be kind of guiding us through that process. We're making a video documentary about not just Keenan, but overall La Liga de Lima and Lima basketball. And we'll be shooting. So we're shooting here up until December 21st. We got here on Thursday on December 4th. And we'll stay through the 21st. And after that, we'll go back to the snowy Midwest. And then during winter quarter, so January, February, March, we will be editing the documentary, putting it all together. And we're shooting for a March release date. It'll be the first ever WNU documentary, WNUR sports documentary. So it'll get released on, all over WNUR. And honestly, Sid, I got to imagine, I mean, this is certainly the first time WNUR is doing a live, show in Peru, but probably
not the last.
Hopefully not the last, but probably
what's in store
on an international level. Like I'm trying to think, like maybe there was a call for like the football game in Ireland a few years ago, but this may very well be the first ever WNUR like live recording, right?
We'd have to consult the WNU historian.
Right, we'd have to look exactly, but this is definitely historical. Surely this is.
They're in the middle of their playoffs right now, and we'll kind of do like a season preview of sorts, kind of what's going on and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, we took video at the game. We are going to go tomorrow to interview Coach Monjes of Regatas and Keenan, which we're very, very excited for. We've toured Regatas, the club, which is, I mean, I've got to say, like, super, I mean, it's right on the Pacific Ocean. The facilities are phenomenal. And then we'll be going over to talk to their opponents, Dinosaurios, a team that is really kind of an upstart for in Peruvian and Lima and Peruvian basketball, a club that has not really been, at least to your knowledge, on the scene for that very long.
Let's zoom out a bit. Like, what even is Peruvian basketball, right? So, Peru, believe it or not, actually has a very rich history in basketball. Played in the inaugural World Cup way back in the day in 1950. Participated regularly in World Cups through the 50s and 60s. The last one being in 1967.
Their president, I believe in 1938, donated the trophy for the South American Basketball Championship. Yeah. It's like this. It's like one of the largest trophies I've ever seen. Like,
it's huge. Yeah. So Peru, participated regularly in the World Cup, in the Olympics,
one of the
64.
Original basketball countries. Right. I don't think it's like, I think it's important to like recognize that. Like Peru, in terms of a basketball culture, in terms of a basketball scene, is one of the oldest in the world.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, it is. It is absolutely. I mean, because you think about the progression. Basketball was invented in the 1890s in the United States by James Naismith, and by the 1950s, really, I mean, South America kind of blossomed. I mean, the first 2 World Cups are hosted in South America by FIBA, and so Peru was a part of that whole scene. But 1964 was the last time Peru played in the Olympics. 1967 was the last time that Peru's structure kind of really takes a tumble. in 2017, the federation was for lack of transparency and for lack of just overall organization, really just corruption
Yeah.
was the concerns. Um,
And I mean, for the documentary standpoint, we'll be talking to Raul Castillo, a journalist for El Comercio. It's kind of the paper of record in Peru, who has written a very nice, very extensive feature story on the problems in basketball federation. Um, and we'll be talking to him on Thursday. Very excited for that.
Yeah, and we're going to talk to a bunch of people that have been involved for a long time in basketball here. So in 2017, Federation gets sanctioned. In 2020, is fully disaffiliated from FIFA, which means that they are just kicked
FIBA,
FIBA, excuse me,
yes.
FIBA, disaffiliated from FIBA, which means that the national team is no longer able to compete. I mean, you're talking about just complete isolation from any kind of international competition, both for the national team and for clubs.
And I mean, it's. I also think it's important to recognize too, like North Korea has a FIBA affiliated basketball federation of basketball team.
Everyone does.
You know,
I mean,
some of them might not play because of like sanctions or something like that. But
they're members.
as far as FIBA is like to FIBA's eyes, Peru does not exist
Yeah.
as a basketball country.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's off the map.
And
right?
and we've looked into it. We believe it's the only UN member state to not have membership other than Liechtenstein, which has a population of like 40,000.
And Lima alone has a population of 12 million.
So, it's 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 really astounding, honestly, what's happened to Lima. And to Peru overall, improving basketball, and now no national team. The teams used to play in international competitions; they can no longer play in international competitions. And so, what's really kind of risen to prominence is La Liga de Lima. So, La Liga de Lima is it's a municipal league, really, just for clubs within the city of Lima, and they compete and they play each other, and there's a champion every year.
It existed before the National League, but it's kind of like if you know like the Brasileirão, the way Brazilian soccer works, you play against teams in your state first earlier in the year, and then you play against teams around the country. So it was like a team like Regatas might put their bench players out to warm up to start the season in La Liga de Lima. They'll win the season and that pretty handily, and then go play against teams around Peru and really teams around South America. Club de Regatas Lima is one of the perennial South American continental representatives for Peru for years and years and years.
And so all of that stopped in 2017 and got completely cut off in 2021. And since then, there's just been no national team, right? And you look at, like, for example, Lima hosted the Pan American Games in 2019. Peru couldn't field the basketball team, right, despite being the host nation. So stuff like that. Yeah. And they can't compete in anything really. World Cup qualifiers, Olympic qualifiers. Like, Peru as a nation, we're just isolated.
It would be akin to like if can you imagine if the U.S. basketball team could not compete in Olympics or World Cups? I mean, like international basketball in the U.S. is not something that's particularly prized. But imagine if there was no NBA because USA basketball was so disorganized, or the Lakers had so much beef with USA basketball that they refused to play in the NBA. I mean, that kind of situation would just be utter chaos. It's kind of what it is happening in Peru, where it's kind of just anarchy as far as basketball organization is concerned. Like, I could start up a basketball league tomorrow, and it would have just as much legitimacy as any other league in Peru because nothing is sanctioned.
Right.
Because there's no federation to sanction anything.
Right. You just have a lack of a governing entity, really. So this league does exist, though, and this league, they play games, they have a regular season, they have playoffs, and so let's talk a little bit about this league. So La Liga de Lima really fancies itself the prized kind of
the de facto
division,
national league,
right,
really,
in Peru, despite only having teams from Lima. And so there's they have a first division, right? And they have a ton of divisions. They have youth divisions. They have a men's league, a women's league.
They have a very strong women's league.
Yeah, and so they have multiple tiers, but Keenan is playing for Reatas in the first division, the first men's division. So they're coming up on the finals now. So there's a regular season. So there's an apertura and a clausura. The apertura is the first half of the season, which is played usually like kind of from like around April-ish to maybe like June, around there. And then they have a clausura, which is played towards the end of the year. So they played this year in like September, October. They took a break in November, and now they've come back in December for the playoffs. So out of all those teams, they have relegation, they have promotion, and they also have playoffs. So 4 teams qualified to the semifinals, including Reatas and Dinosaurios. And so our joint obscure ballers of the week, which is a classic segment for obscure ballers. The joint obscure ballers of the week is Reatas and Dinosaurios, really, and just La Liga de Lima in general. So the semis just ended last night. Both series were sweeps. So Reatas took down Club Leones 2-0, and Dinosaurios took down Club Real 2-0, which, by the way, is a big feat because Real is historically Reatas' like counterpart, right? Their rival. Like that's El Clásico.
It's the
of Peruvian
Barcelona
basketball.
Real Madrid.
Right. Right. And so it's really between Reatas and Real for the most part who's going to be the top dog. And sure enough, Real, they were 7-0 going into the 8th and final game of the Clausura regular season. And then they lost to Reatas in the final match. And then they got swept by Dinosaurios in the semis.
And I mean, I think for those at home who were tuning into La Liga de Lima for the first time, I mean, Dinosaurios picked up a major acquisition in the summer, bringing in
In the winter.
in the winter.
In the winter.
I mean,
here.
Yeah, in the winter here, in the summer in the U.S. So Juan Pablo Venegas,
Yes.
who is, by and large, pretty much the consensus top Peruvian-born player in the world.
Yes.
And so he was the only Peruvian player playing abroad. He's 25, playing in Argentina up until now. Came home to Lima to play for Dinosaurios, and he has been on fire throughout these playoffs, throughout the season, really. In game 1, scoring 29 points and 7 assists in a 106-80 win for Dinosaurios, and they're the only team to beat Regatas in the
regular season. Yeah. So Regatas finished 7-1, and it's important to note that Regatas won the Apertura, right? So Regatas, they won like the first half of the season. So if they win the Clausura, it's over, right? Because they've won both parts. They're total champions for the whole year, for 2025. If they lose the finals, then you have to have another. So let me back up a bit. So Regatas beat Leones 2-0. So Regatas beat Leones 2-0. They're through to the final, right? Dinosaurios beat Real, as we just mentioned, 2-0. So they're also through to the final. So now Reatas and Dinosaurios are facing off in a final for the Clausura this upcoming week. Best of 3.
Game 1 is
Wednesday, and then game 2 is Saturday night, and game 3, if needed, would be Sunday night. And actually, those games you can watch them for free on YouTube.
Yes.
On Juega Más. It's Juega Más is a YouTube channel. You just look it up. They have the games for free on live stream. So tune in to Keenan Fitzmaurice in the Peruvian Basketball League Finals, or the Lima Basketball League Finals, really. But anyway, so they're playing in these finals, but these are the Clausura finals. So Regatas already won the Apertura earlier in the year. After the Apertura, so this would have been like June, July, August. So winter here, summer in the northern hemisphere for you Americans. Then there were a lot of acquisitions. So Dinosaurios picked up Juan Pablo Venegas. Regatas picked up Keenan Fitzmaurice. Three Americans, really. Keenan Fitzmaurice, Caleb Vaughn, and Chris Ware.
So Caleb Vaughn, I believe, is Canadian.
Excuse me. Caleb Vaughn is
but
Canadian.
He played a good chunk of his career
in the U.S.
in Toledo, Ohio,
Yes.
And other parts. Something that we have been following and considering as part of our documentary is that there are a lot. Really, Keenan is just one of the many Americans and foreign players who are playing in this league. A lot of them are like total journeymen. Like they've played in Nicaragua, in Panama, in Cuba,
all over the place,
all over the world.
Yeah.
And it's an experience that we're interested in. Is you see players in college. That's kind of the natural place that we think of them, and then they either go to the NBA, they go to Europe, or they kind of disappear from the map, right? And so what happens to the players who say, I might not be NBA quality right now, but I still want to keep playing professional basketball. Like basketball is what I do. Basketball is what I love doing, right? And the lengths these kinds of players go to keep that passion up is something that really interests us, and that we're looking maybe not we'll see what makes the final cut.
Right.
But something that is definitely noteworthy, especially with this trio of Americans leading Regatas.
Yeah, and like Chris Ware, he's from Chicago,
West
right?
side of Chicago. Yeah.
No other connections to Peru. He's just played. This is just where he's playing,
Yeah.
right? So really interesting to kind of see how that journey happens, for all these different players that end up all over the world. But yeah, so now you've got these finals this upcoming week between Regatas and Dinosaurios. We're expecting a pretty big matchup, right? I mean, Juan Pablo Venegas and Dinosaurios, they have other players too. I mean, they have American players. They have some really quality talent.
Yeah.
So I mean, they finished 6-2 in the Clausura, but they had 2 early losses. Like those 2 losses were really early, and they ended really strong, and they just swept Real. So I mean, honestly, they have the momentum.
And for it, like narrative wise, if these games go to 3, and I mean, if Dinosaurios wins, and then if Dinosaurios wins, then the Apertura Clausura is split, right? And they go to that super final, which again would be between Regatas and Dinosaurios,
right, exactly.
right? And that's a one-off for all the marbles, basically, right?
So because you have these 2 halves, right? The Apertura, the Clausura. Regatas has already won the Apertura. If Dinosaurios wins the finals against Regatas, the best of 3-game series this upcoming week,
then they meet again.
Then they have to meet again because Regatas won the Apertura, Dinosaurios won the Clausura. So then you have a super final, right? Like it's like you have the first half champion versus the second half champion playing each other for the year-long
champion of championships.
Yeah, the full champion of the season per se of the year.
I mean, again, it's like something to highlight is just that these players are doing it just for La Liga de Lima, or like the competition. Like there's no continental basketball.
No.
There's no in South America and in European sports in general. If you win your national league or if you compete really well in your country domestically, then it's like you get onto the like the continental tournament, which is really the big prize,
right. There's a South American league of basketball where in theory you would be able to qualify for, right? And also for these Peruvian players, there's no national team. So they can't get called up for a national team. They can't play for the national team. Keenan was telling us because Keenan's mom is Peruvian, right? That's where the connection is, for him to play at Regatas. His mom played at Regatas. His father, who's American, also played there. They actually met there. And so that's kind of his connection. So he is Peruvian from his mom's side, grew up, in Kansas. So he's kind of reconnecting with his roots here. And he was saying, if there was a national team, he could play for it, right? He could play for it. And try to, qualify for World Cups and Olympics. And that'd be really exciting, right? But that doesn't exist. There is no such thing. So really these players, they just play in this league, right? And Venegas actually, Juan Pablo Venegas, he was the only Peruvian player playing outside of Peru. He was playing in Argentina. And
he was playing for the national team before they got disaffiliated.
Yes,
At 17.
He's only 25.
At 17.
So excellent player.
Super talented.
Came back to Peru this September. Will likely go back out, maybe to Argentina, maybe to some other league in South America.
But I mean, who knows? I mean, La Liga de Lima is putting together a proposal essentially for a new federation.
Yeah, and that's another thing we want to look into is, so La Liga de Lima as an organization, they're trying to bring the federation back, right? Because that's the goal within Peruvian basketball. How do we get a national team back playing, competing? How do we get a national league, right? Because the National Basketball League crumbled after the federation fell apart. And now you have this Lima League, and you also have a quote-unquote national league.
Liga Nacional de Basket.
Right? Yeah, you have Liga Nacional, but there's no Lima teams in that Liga Nacional. So you have these two leagues.
It's very weird because they're both leagues are actually holding their finals right at this moment. You know, so this other national league,
they're playing in Huancayo, which is not in Lima.
It's not even really close. I mean, it's a little bit.
I mean, it's like the equivalent of one state over, right? But to drive there would take forever. And
population-wise, it's not like the U.S. where there are multiple big cities.
Right,
it's
right. So they're playing in Huancayo, which is I mean, very much it's in the Andes. It's in the Andes, right? So it's a different region of Peru for sure, and a different department, which would be the equivalent to your states here, in Junin. And I mean, it's very strange. I mean, we're here in Lima, we're covering La Liga Lima, but at the same time, you have this other league that's being run by the disaffiliated federation, right? So very strange. But La Liga de Lima, the Lima League, is trying to put together a group along with some people from Congress to try to get together a national federation, do like they're saying like a group,
Mhm.
right, to kind of
Rebuild,
restructure and rebuild, remake
essentially.
the federation and try to go for affiliation with FIBA once again. So, yeah, I mean that's what's happening
Yeah.
here. We're very
We will
excited.
keep you updated on
Yeah,
Instagram,
yeah,
all the
keep an eye out.
socials,
Keep an eye out.
game updates, etc. And keep you guys updated on our journey. Really, what we're doing on day to day. Yeah, so stay posted.
Yeah. So WNU Peru reporting from Peru, getting game coverage from La Liga Lima semifinals, which I know is massive, massive news in Evanston.
Hey, I mean, it's Regatas is in better form than a certain other basketball
This is
team up
true.
north.
This is true. They won their game on Saturday.
Not everyone can say that.
Yes. But yeah, so game one of the finals is on Wednesday. We'll be there. Very excited about that. And by the way, like this league, I mean, yes, it is just a local Lima league, but I mean, they have a TV deal with Cueramas, and all the games get broadcast live, on Cueramas's YouTube channel. You can also check out, like, they have like game coverage. There's this journalist, Leo Torres, that he does, like, him and also another guy called Santiago. They do live play-by-play and color commentary for every game. They do post-game interviews. There's graphics on the broadcast. Like it's a real broadcast, right? It's very much a real broadcast, TV broadcast with, post-game interviews. They have, like, matchup graphics,
socials,
stats.
yeah.
They have tons of socials. I mean, the league has almost 30,000 followers on Instagram now, right? Which is, that's very much like a sizable number. So,
and I also think like it's now become the centralized hub for this basketball culture in Peru, where it's like it's kind of the only structure to organize around.
I mean, certainly in Lima,
that left really.
Yeah.
I mean, there are many other smaller leagues
Yes,
and like
but
different basketball academies, but this is
the biggest kind of demonstration of its legitimacy. But anyways, with all that being said, those are our obscure ballers of the week. La Liga Lima, Reatas, Dinosaurios, powerhouse teams. And yeah, the Club de Reatas Lima, Keenan Fitzmaurice's new home. With all that being said, we are going to take a quick break before we delve into the second half of our show, which might be a little more familiar. We'll have some deep dives ready for you, classic obscure ballers content. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a second.
Where can I find all of WNUR Sports' content in one convenient place?
Aha! Why, I know where. Skedaddle over to WNURsports.com, your online hub for everything WNUR Sports.
How bodacious! What might one encounter in this magical digital destination?
Updated broadcast schedules,
Okay. All right. We
Uh,
should have
I
some
believe we're
better
back.
audio.
Yes, some better audio,
Or
some
not
better
better
video.
video.
Better video.
Better video. most
Sorry for the
importantly.
technical difficulties, folks.
All right.
It's a little bit more difficult when you're
Yeah, we're not, at the
doing
station.
things
We're not at the
from
station.
about 3,000,
4,000 miles away. 4,000 miles away. But it
Um,
looks like the video should be a little crisper now. So anyways, we'll
take
go
a
ahead.
look. We'll take a look. Yeah.
We'll go ahead and go into our deep dives for the day. A classic, really a classic segment here on Obscure Ballers. And start off with my deep dive. So we've had a lot of talk about Peruvian soccer on this show. We've talked about the 1975 Copa America winning team. We've talked about, just various stories about legends like Hugo Sotil and, Teofilo Cubillas is one that will come up. The World Cup teams. You talk about just overall Peruvian soccer. It's by far the most popular sport here, the national team. World Cup qualification in 2018, almost making it, but unfortunately not in 2022. It takes up a lot of the Peruvian sports psyche for sure. But there was another team. There was a team that captured the imagination of Peru. Really, I mean, at a time when there was kind of nothing else going on in terms of sports, and really for Peru, it was a really difficult moment. It was the 80s, which, if you're not aware, was a time when Peru was under really civil war with with I mean, it was a terrorist group, Shining Path. And so the nation was kind of looking for something to kind of rally around, right? Like something to kind of, motivate the country and unify the country. It was really difficult times. And the volleyball team is what did that. The Peruvian volleyball team, which at the time was a powerhouse. I mean, Peru women's volleyball, Peru would win South American Championship after South American Championship. Nowadays, Brazil is really the powerhouse in South American volleyball.
But for Peruvian, I believe it's like the second most like important, probably.
It's certainly in terms of team sports, and I mean, you look at the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. It's gold after gold after gold in the South American Championships. I mean, Peru really kind of owned Brazil at the time. Times have changed, but at the time, Peru really owned Brazil, and so then kind of the thought was, all right, well, what about the world stage, right? What's happening, in how can we kind of elevate from not just South American champions but world champions? And the 1988 Seoul Olympics were really that moment. And this Peru team, I mean, they were beasts. They took down Brazil 3-0 in the group stage. They beat China 3-2, which was actually a comeback win. It's a very, storied very storied game. Because the thing is, people for South Korea, you got to remember the time zones are so different. So people would wake up at like 2 a.m. to watch these games, right? Like they'd wake up at like crazy hours, and they'd have work in the morning, but it didn't matter. The Peruvian volleyball team was playing. They'd watch these games. Come from behind win against China, beat the United States also 3-2 in the group stage. I mean, China and the U.S. Those are the two massive powerhouses in just in like the world, right? So to beat both of them, that was massive. In anything, right? And then you move on to the final round, which was against Japan. Beat Japan in the semifinals 3-2 as well. And then the matchup against Soviet Union, at the time Cold War. Unfortunately, couldn't get the job done against the Soviets. Lost 3-2. But I mean, it was 17-15 in the last set. It got as close as it could get, right? So Peru ended up winning the silver medal, and that was a huge deal, right? Peru is not a country that wins a lot of Olympic medals. In fact, Stefano Peixeira, he won a bronze medal at the Paris Games in 2024 for sailing. That was Peru's first Olympic medal in literal decades, right? Like we're talking about decades. Any medal, like gold, silver, bronze,
For any sport.
Right? And Peru, we don't really compete in the Winter Olympics like at all. Barring a couple of athletes sometimes. And usually it's like, German-born, with a
Dual
Peruvian
nat,
dual nat, an athlete with maybe a Peruvian parent, who's competing on behalf of Peru. It's usually not a Peruvian-born player. or someone who grew up in Peru that's competing for Peru, which there's nothing wrong with. I mean, we welcome anyone who wants to represent the flag, at the Winter Olympics or any competition, but it's rare.
Not really a
It's rare.
player developed
There's
by
no,
like a Peruvian
no,
system.
and these athletes, I mean, they travel on their own, right? Like they're going to the Olympics. There's no Winter Olympic delegation that Peru sends, right? So they're there, they represent the country, but it's not, there's no real organization for that. So to win a silver medal, not just in any sport, but in volleyball, which is like a massive team sport that so many countries focus on, that was a really big deal, right? That was a massive deal. And yeah, it was really just a special team. They were unfortunately unable to kind of really run it back, right? They never really made it back to that stage, in terms of like winning more Olympic medals. They kind of really you go into the 90s and the success at the South American level didn't really continue. But like for example, people like Natalia Malaga, everyone knows that name in Peru. She was kind of like the fierce sort of leader. There was La Zurda de Oro, Cecilia Tait, Gina Torrealba, who was the captain. Like these players, they were as big as soccer stars, right? Like they were as important as soccer stars. And in fact, I would say more at the time, right? Because the soccer team was doing so poorly.
Because then like when you win, you're a hero. You're the hero. So
Right.
it's like any like even like I mean we talked about it a couple weeks ago. North Korea's women's national team, like those players, when you don't have much else, become like the national superstars, basically.
Right.
Right.
And especially at the time, it was during, the tough times with terrorism, with Sendero Luminoso. It really kind of gave people something to galvanize about, to be proud, right? To really kind of unite the country as Peruvians. So it was just really important, right? And players like Natalia Malaga, she later became a coach. She put like volleyball academies, right? Like these players, kind of stayed. Um, they've stayed involved with the sport, through their whole life. And probably one of my favorite, but really the country's favorites figures of this whole run was Manbok Park. Manbok Park, he was the coach. Um, he was the coach, and he was just, I mean, everyone just loved him. He was a South Korean. They would call him Mr. Park or Mr. Park. And South Korean came to Peru to coach the Peruvian national team, brought them to the silver medal at the Olympic Games in Seoul, in his home country. And Manbok Park, I mean, absolute legend, absolute legend. It's kind of interesting how like you have like these coaches also, not just play, like we talked about, players coming to different parts around the world to keep playing the sport that they love, but coaches too, right? Like coaches, they'll end up in the craziest of spots, right? Coaching, I mean, in soccer you'll see like coaches
I
playing,
mean, Jurgen Klinsmann
right,
coached in Korea. I mean,
right,
Arsene Wenger coached in Japan for Nagoya Grampus before he went to Arsenal.
right. So yeah, so Manbok Park was really that. He was that guy for Peru, right? Coached the national team for volleyball, got them to a silver medal. Passed away in 2019 in Lima. He stayed in Lima, so that tells you how much he loved Peru. And yeah, I mean, you look at his resume, right? Silver medal at the World Championships in 1982, bronze medal in 1986, and that silver medal at the 1988 Seoul Olympics. So absolute legends. And yeah, I mean, to this day, volleyball is still very popular in Peru. People still play it, as you said. Sid, probably the second most popular team sport after soccer, which of course, football. But yeah, volleyball's still very popular. There's a very healthy league, like a Peruvian volleyball league, that like their games are televised nationally, right? People follow it. It's a big deal. Like Alianza Lima and Sporting Cristal and La U all have teams, right? So it's very important. And even right now, the Los Juegos Bolivarianos, they're right now in Lima. They just ended actually. The Bolivarian Games, which is between, it's kind of like a mini Pan American Games between the countries that were in theory like liberated by Simon Bolivar. So Peru's in there, Bolivia, of course, Venezuela, Colombia, Panama, etc., etc. And they were held in Lima and Ayacucho this year. And so the volleyball team actually was making some waves. They ended up winning the silver medal but they lost to Venezuela, which was unfortunate because they beat Venezuela right before that. But yeah, lost to Venezuela in the final. But like you look at, they were playing at the Coliseo de Bos, which is the largest kind of basketball arena or a volleyball arena as well, just indoor arena here in Lima, and it was packed. It was packed, right? Like people were going to the game, they were paying attention, they followed the team. Right? Even like talking to like my grandma, over dinner, it comes up, right? Like, oh, did you see the volleyball team? They won tonight, or they beat Colombia. So it is a big deal in terms of like the volleyball team, and also just and it's important to mention like with the soccer team, whenever in Peru you talk about soccer, it's always the men's soccer team. Whenever you talk about volleyball, it's always the women's volleyball team, right? So it's also kind of like a counterpart in terms of.
I mean, it's so weird. Like we were walking through this park on the way to like the place we're staying, and I mean, it's a Sunday night here in Lima. It's a holiday tomorrow and Tuesday, so the kids don't have school. And there are these kids, playing in this park, and the boys are playing soccer and the girls are playing volleyball over the swings. It's kind of like, I mean, not to say so, but like, I mean, it's a gendered,
It very
split,
much
right?
is.
Yeah.
It very much is. But that being said, though, Peruvian women's soccer has been growing a ton. There's a national league that's been really gaining steam in recent years. And also like men's volleyball. Like at my school, I went to an all boys school here. Like we had a volleyball team. They took it very seriously, right? Even like at regatas, we were going around and we walked
Oh
past the
yeah, I walked
volleyball
past the
and we
men's
saw the
volleyball,
men's
yeah,
volleyball team
team
practicing.
yeah.
So it is also actually I saw recently Regatas' men's volleyball team, they made it to the national finals. So you do see more, I think, variety nowadays, but very much historically, that's been the case. But anyways, that's been my deep dive. We're here in Lima, Peru.
Yeah.
So
Now, I mean, you have the full spectrum of Peruvian sports. I mean, like,
I mean, you could go into surfing, you could go into sailing.
sure.
Right? But 1988 women's volleyball team, Peruvian national team. You just have to be there. You just have to be there. Silver medal winners at the Seoul Summer Olympics, and just volleyball culture in general here in Peru.
I mean, like, surely, when the next time Peruvian sports comes up at a party, you have all the
Well, if you
knowledge.
watch obscure ballers, I mean, at this point, you know all about Hugo Sotil in the 1975 run to the Copa America win. Okay, you know all about the 1988, all right, volleyball team that won the silver medal at the Seoul Olympics. Okay, you should be